as I shared Sunday, just been an incredible trip to El Salvador. Was supposed to be there 10 days, ended up being 9 days. But I want to share just a little bit about the ministry that I have been a part of. I know that Alan came and shared a couple of weeks ago, our area missionary, and talked much about it. But I want to be clear a little bit about what's going on, and something that is coming up as early as tomorrow that I want you to be praying about. So I'll just start by saying that when a couple of years ago I attended, well, maybe it was last year, I attended, I'm just glad to be here tonight. I think it was last November. I actually, not this past November, the November before that, I attended a conference, and Alan had asked me to come, and when I came, they were talking about this ministry that they've been doing for a few years to pastors down in Central America. And one of the things that really gripped me was here in the United States, how much education pastors have. And even as far as that goes, there are a lot of folks that have a Christian education. I understand that there are some more conservative Christian schools than others, but we just have so much access to a Christian culture and to a Christian education that though some may not pursue that, the opportunity is there. Whereas in Central America, there are places, and the places that Alan and this other gentleman named Gary Bully, who is involved in the ministry, where they have tried to go is to those areas where pastors do not have any access to a seminary or any kind of training. And so what ends up happening is you go to places that are sometimes in the mountains, like when I was in Honduras. I went to a place that was very remote, and so they just really had no access to anything. Even this past week when I was in El Salvador, went to a city that was, most of the pastors there had very little education, period. Most of them did not even have a high school degree. And so it wasn't that they didn't have access to some of that, but they didn't have it. They didn't have any Christian training. They're operating with very little tools in terms of being able to interpret the scriptures. A lot of things that we just take for granted. Even this group that is here tonight, and you are. This is a bright group. I mean, I can see this is a group that studies. There are a few exceptions, and you know who you are. But in this group, you would be surprised at how much Christian discipleship that you have really truly just received. You would be surprised, and if you are in a conversation with some of these pastors, what you ought sometimes take for granted as somewhat elementary, they've never had any teaching or training at all. And it's very humbling when you go into that environment and you go in and their attitude is that they're so, I wouldn't even say hungry, they are so starving for someone to be able to teach them how to interpret the scriptures, how to understand theology, how to be able to do pastoral ministry. Most of these guys, when I taught I taught a church history class in Honduras, and most of those guys, I would say probably 95% of them, weren't even familiar with the Reformation. I mean, they just don't have any kind of education, and so when you're teaching these things, it gives them an understanding of, especially with church history, of their connectedness to the Scriptures. That they see that this is not something that is broken, but they even understanding the the place of the Catholic Church and how when you think about the Reformation, all these things that have taken place, it gives them a context and gives them an understanding. And I taught how most of that group that I taught there was Pentecostals, and I taught where Pentecostals had come from, and their roots being primarily from Wesley and the Methodists, and teaching them how this has come about. And they were so appreciative because it gave them a heritage. It gave them an understanding of their heritage, I should say. This past time I was teaching preaching, and so many of those guys do not know how to prepare a sermon. Some of those pastors have been preaching and teaching 7, 8, some of them up to 20 years, and they don't know. They don't know how to prepare a sermon. They don't know how to work through a passage. What they've kind of grabbed a hold to or gravitated towards is that anytime somebody comes and teaches them something, they write it down, and then they go and they just share what they've heard. And so a lot of what they were teaching, American missionaries had been in different places, were just things that they had heard from them, and that's how they would feed their flock. And so when you're telling them and teaching them how to dive into the Scriptures and how to prepare a message, they were just so excited about these things. In fact, I had asked them. I gave them a passage, and asked them to break it down, and gave them the tools of how to prepare a message. And I said, would anybody like to share, your approach or your outline? And just about every one of them were just saying, yeah, this is what I got. And one person said, I may not, I don't know if I did it right, but I want to know how to do it. And just a humility on their part, and they were just so excited to be able to take these tools and they were looking forward to being able to share these with others. And so when I heard about this 16 months ago, or whenever that was, I was taken back by how much education we have and how very little education that these pastors and training that these pastors have all throughout, especially in Central America, but all throughout the world. And so it was then that God really began to grip my heart that I want to be a part of this ministry. I'd like to participate in this. And then I spoke to Alan about it, and Alan, that was part of his reasoning in asking me to come and hear, was he was setting me up. He knew that once I heard about this and heard some of the stories, that I would buy in, that's what I would want to do, and that's what I did. And so, as you know, been 3 times in the last 5 months, and that's a lot. I can't go as much as Alan wants to send me. I want to have that balance there, but the need is so great, and the response, and even the churches. I'll just give you one testimony of a church that I visited and preached in. I mentioned Sunday that I had preached. I went to a public school, and shared the gospel with different assemblies there. The receptivity is amazing. I went to a Christian school, and as I think I brought this up Sunday, that I went to a classroom, I shared my testimony, and the gospel said, how long do I have? You got 15 minutes. Well, I did that 9 times. I went to 9 classes and had 15 minutes. And I was exhausted. I mean, afterwards, I went back and I said, I just want to go and take a nap. And Pastor Ed said, that's fine. He said, I'll be back in 2 hours. You're preaching tonight. And I said, okay. And so he wanted to give me as many opportunities as he could. So I went to this particular church on Tuesday night. I went somewhere on Monday night and Sunday. But this particular church I went to, he was a graduate. 2 years ago, he went through this training, this pastor training, is 12 courses in different topics: theology, New Testament survey, Old Testament survey, preaching, hermeneutics, Christian or church history, and so on, pastoral counseling. And he had gone through this. And after going through the course, he was gripped by the fact that he and his church were not sharing the gospel. And he really said, this is what we need to be about. And so that's what he began to do, was share the gospel. Well, this has been 2 years ago. His church has some 30-plus missionaries God has accumulated there. When I say missionaries, I mean they go all over the country to share the gospel. And God has made him a steward to preach and teach and shepherd these missionaries. They're going all over. And in the past 2 years, they've planted 2 churches in addition to this. And so this is a church about 60, but they've planted 2 other churches equal to their church, is where they are now. It's amazing what the Lord will do through those who just avail themselves to him and say, I'm going to do what you've called us to do. I'm going to do what you've commanded us to do. And so this has been, that's just one of many stories. But having got back, as I understand the ministry, and I think Alan touched on this, the ministry and the vision for the ministry was simply this, that they would go to a country and they would share this material, and they would teach and train those pastors. So for 12, well, like in El Salvador, it was for 12 months. So they sent somebody every month that did this. Some they've gone every other month, depending on the country, which would take 2 years. But they go through, and the idea is that they have 12 Americans come 12 times to present the material. The second year, they swap it. It's 6 times, and so every other month they come, and then every other month a graduate of that study teaches the course, and so that by the third year, the Americans are out of the way, and it's the nationals. It's those pastors who are now teaching and training. They've had, I want to say this number's right. I think it's right. 87 graduates there in El Salvador, and they're, as he mentioned 2 Sundays ago, they're in Peru, they're in Honduras. They're the guy that I met with is gone to he's in Nicaragua, and just the legwork to find some places in Costa Rica and Nicaragua, and just opening doors. I mean, these doors are just open. The Lord has opened up this opportunity, and it's not. And the interesting thing about it is it's not that they're going and saying, "Hey, this is what we want to do." When Alan recently went to Peru, and had the opportunity to meet with some of the leaders from the local churches, he didn't tell them what they were doing. He asked them, "What is your greatest need?" And every time this has happened, it happened there, the response was, what we really need is for people to come and train our pastors and to give us curriculum. And that's exactly what they're doing. And so it's awesome that this is the thing they recognize, and this is the thing they're asking for, and the Lord is answering their prayers. And so all this is going on. Well, there's another person. I mentioned Alan and Gary Bully. Both of these men have been. This is the vision that they had for the ministry. But Gary's, he wants to go moved a little bit away from that, and he's wanting to go back and go deeper with some of the pastors. He wants to go train them a little bit more deeper, and so he's kind of taking a different direction. But Alan's sticking with the vision that he believes that the Lord has for us. The meeting I'm having tomorrow is about an opportunity, and I don't want to present it all right now until I've got all the facts, but I talked to Pastor Ed, and there may be an opportunity for our church to become more involved in this. And what I mean by that is I think what the proposal is going to be is that these two cities that are in Costa Rica, that maybe, because I've told them about our church and some of the men of God that we have in our church that are elders and teachers and qualified, maybe we would for a year or two adopt two cities in Costa Rica, and rather than me just going, maybe we would have different teachers from our church go and help with training those pastors. And I think this is the opportunity that is going to be presented. So I'm saying this to ask you to join me in praying over this, because I think it could be an awesome opportunity for our church. It's amazing how this kind of ministry 2 years ago was not even on my radar. I wasn't even thinking about pastors in Central America, and I can barely go to sleep without thinking and praying for Pastor Ed and for his team and for all of these who are my brothers and sisters in Christ. And that's the Lord. That's the Lord who's changed my thinking. And so, what is it that God wants to do in Hickory Road Baptist Church? It may be that He wants us to have a global ministry. You ever thought you'd hear that? Would it be for forever? Until the Lord comes back? Maybe it's just for a season. Obviously, it's going to take money to do this, and there's an investment on our part. But join me in praying about this, because it would do my heart good to see, and I'm careful how I say this, it'd do my heart good to see some of y'all leave the country. It would do my heart good to see some of you experience what I've experienced in Central America, because I know it's done wonders for my soul. And so anyway, that's the meeting that I have set up tomorrow, and I will come back with more and report, and we'll keep praying and see what the Lord is doing. But I want to, that's just my introduction to Revelation 15 tonight, but I want to take some time and let's pray together, and then we will look at this passage. And so with heads bowed and eyes closed, I just wonder if you would just take a moment to pray for this meeting that's taking place tomorrow, and also pray for just for the leadership of the Holy Spirit to guide us in this decision-making, and then pray for our brothers who are less fortunate and don't have all that we have been entrusted with.